This is LibreQuest. My name is Matt. It's the 25th of October, 2019, and my buddy Nathan Hale was kind enough today to let me premiere some of his music on the podcast. So thank you for that, Nathan. And at the end of the episode, I'll be playing that song in its entirety. If you would like to stick around for that, and I think you should, it's a really good track. So again, thank you, Nathan, for that. So the first article today is from gamingonlinux.com. It is a sweet text-driven traveling adventure wanderlust travel stories arrives on Linux, and we have a discount for you. So that is really cool. The discount is for GOG, and it is a 33% discount. So I'm pretty sure it's Wanderlust. It might be Fonderlust. I don't know, maybe it's German. But it says Wanderlust Travel Stories is a text-driven adventure that wants you to slow down a bit from the lead gameplay and narrative designers on the Witcher games, and written in collaboration with seasoned journalists and reporters. It's out for Linux now, and we have a Gaming on Linux 33% discount for you. So that is cool. That's over on gamingonlinux.com. And of course, I will add the links for that article wherever this podcast is posted. And that's on archive.org, librequest.org, and on YouTube. The next story is from It's Foss, open source CMS Ghost 3.0 released with new features for publishers. This was posted on the 23rd. Ghost is a free and open source content management system. If you are not aware of the term, a CMS is a software that allows you to build a website that is primarily focused on creating content without knowledge of HTML and other web-related technologies. Ghost is in fact one of the best open source CMSs out there. Its main focus is creating lightweight and fast-loading and good-looking blogs. So that's over on itsfoss.com if you want to read more about that one. And for the historical article today, it's going to be from 2006, today in 2006, Oracle's Unfixable Linux. So I'm going to scroll down a bit in this article because a lot of it is actually mostly an opinion piece, but I'll read you this part here. This is the actual news from the article. So Oracle announced today that it was repackaging Red Hat's Linux, selling CentOS, and providing their own support for it at less than Red Hat's price. Of course, Oracle doesn't have the engineers who actually put the stuff together, so one would hope that their inferior service would be cheaper. I think this the writer definitely has a negative outlook on this. And I'm not going to read the next part, but it says, this isn't a good thing for Linux or Oracle. And of course, Oracle's new Linux is called Unbreakable Linux. So he goes on to write that he went to the website and it immediately threw him a Java error. And so he was picking on Oracle about that, but that was written by Scott Allen Miller, October 26, 2006. Oh, October 26, that is actually tomorrow. Interesting. Okay, well, it's got two different dates here. Well, I chose it because it was from today in 2006. It says October 25th, 2006, and then it says, I guess it was updated on the 26th. But yeah, definitely a negative opinion of Oracle's move there from 2006. So, okay, but the main topic today is going to be Linus Torvalds. I had yesterday I could not remember what topic I was going with, and I had several that I was trying to choose from, but I had planned today to talk about Linus Torvalds. And so I'm going to read through some articles here about Linus Torvalds. And just, if you don't know about Linus Torvalds, and actually I wanted to share a story. When I was a new Linux user, and I guess it would have been around 2001, because I had just installed, this was like a week after I had installed Mandrake 7.2 on my my computer. I was working at a car dealership, and one of the guys I was working with had a tattoo of Tux on his arm. And I asked him, hey, because I was new to Linux, and I was like, man, that looks like the penguin from the operating system that I'm using. And I said, hey, have you ever heard of Linux? And he's like, he got an attitude immediately. He says, well, why do you think I got this penguin tattooed on my arm? And I was like, oh, is that the Linux penguin? He's like, it's Tux. I didn't know his name was Tux, It's like, I thought his name was the Linux penguin. I didn't know. I was literally, I think I had been running Linux for about a week at that point.
And at one point in the conversation that we were having, he said, "What do you think Linux means?" And I said, I didn't know. And I thought, oh, is it Lilo and Unix? And he was very, very hostile. He was a militant Linux user. And, you know, it's funny thinking back about it, you know, but I kind of understand at the same time thinking back about it. But he was very upset that I thought the bootloader for the operating system was part of the name. But anyway, now he wanted to explain to me about Linus Torvalds and who he was and what he had contributed to the computing world through the Linux kernel. So I'm going to start with an article from itsfoss.com, and it's 20 facts that you may or may not have known about Linus Torvalds. Number one is he was named after a Nobel Peace Prize winner. Linus Benedict Torvalds was born on the 28th of December 1969 in Helsinki. He comes from a family of journalists. His father is Nils Torvalds, a Finnish politician and perhaps presidential candidate in the next elections. Not sure when this, let me see when this article was written. June 9, 2019, okay. Okay, all the Torvalds in the world are relatives. That's interesting. That's number two. Number three, I'm just going to read through these pretty quick and get moved on to the next part that I want to talk about. Number three is Commodore VIC-20 was his first computer. Number four, the second lieutenant Linus Torvalds, okay, though he preferred to spend time on computers rather than in athletic activities, he had to attend the compulsory military training. He held the rank of second lieutenant. That's cool. Number five, he created Linux because he didn't have money for Unix. Number six, Linux could have been called Freaks. Okay, yep, Freaks, right before he changed the name to Linux. Number seven, Linus was his main... Oh, I'm sorry, I misread that, not Linus. Number seven is Linux was his main project in university. Number eight, he married his student. Okay, let's read this one here. In 1993, he was teaching at the University of Helsinki. He gave the task of composing email as homework to the students. Composing emails were a big deal back then. A female student named Tove or Tovi, I don't know how to say Linus's wife's name. I'm just going to say Tove, Moni, completed the task by sending him an email asking him out on a date. He accepted, and 3 years later, the first of their three daughters was born. Interesting stuff there. Okay, so number 9 is Linus has an asteroid named after him. Number 10, Linus had to battle for the trademark of Linux. Patent trolls, I guess. Number 11, Steve Jobs wanted him to work on Apple's Mac OS. Number 12, Linus also created Git. 13, Linus hardly codes these days. 14 is Linus hates C++. Number 15, even Linus Torvalds found Linux difficult to install. Okay. Number 16, he loves scuba diving. 17, the foul-mouthed Torvalds has improved his behavior. That's good news. Makes a lot of people happy. Number 18, he is too shy to speak in public. Number 19, not a social media buff. And 20 is Torvalds is settled in the USA. It says here, Linus moved to the US in 1997 and settled there with his wife and 3 daughters. He became a US citizen in 2010. At present, he works full-time on the Linux kernel under the Linux Foundation. Very cool stuff. All right, let's move on here to the Fellow Awards. Okay, since 1987, the Computer History Museum Fellow Awards have honored distinguished technology leaders who have forever changed the world with their accomplishments. This prestigious award recognizes each fellow's role in the advancement of computer history, as well as the impact of their contributions. The fellows have truly bettered our lives and society. The Computer History Museum is proud to have a part in highlighting and preserving the stories of these esteemed technology heroes for future generations. So Linus Torvalds received the Fellow Award in 2008. And there's a small biography about him here. But I'm going to move on to some quotes. I wanted to share some quotes from Linus Torvalds. And I quite enjoy reading these. I find them to be pretty funny. Okay, so here's one quote from him. Microsoft isn't evil. They just make really crappy operating systems. Any program is only as good as it is useful. Okay, I would agree with that. I would agree with the first one I read too. Most good programmers do programming not because they expect to get paid or get adulation by the public, but because it's fun to program. In real open source, you have the right to control your own destiny. All right, next quote. I am perfectly happy complaining because it's cathartic, and I'm perfectly happy arguing with people on the internet because arguing is my favorite pastime, not programming. All right, next quote. What I find most interesting is how people really have taken Linux and used it in ways that attribute and motivations that I never felt. Oh, I'm sorry. Use it in ways and attributes and motivations that I never felt. Okay. Yeah, I misread that one. All right, let's move on to the next quote. I don't think I'm unusual in preferring my laptop to be thin and light. Okay, that sounds reasonable. Oh my, here's another quote from him. My name is Linus, and I am your god. Wow, that's creepy. That's a creepy one. Okay, so let me read through his biography here. A little more insight into who Linus Torvalds is. Linus Torvalds created the Linux kernel and oversaw open source development of the widely used Linux operating system. Torvalds was born in December 28, 1969 in Helsinki, Finland. Torvalds enrolled at the University of Helsinki in 1988, graduating with a master's degree in computer science. His MSc thesis was titled Linux, a portable operating system. An avid computer programmer, Linus authored many gaming applications in his early years. After purchasing a personal computer with an Intel 386 CPU, he began using Minix, a Unix-inspired operating system created by Andrew Tannenbaum, for use as a teaching tool. Torvalds started to work on a new kernel, later he named Linux, after he named it Freaks. That's not in here, but later he named Linux, in the fall of 1991. And after forming a team of volunteers to work on this new kernel, released version 1.0 in the spring of 1994. In 1996, Torvalds accepted an invitation to visit the California headquarters of Transmeta. Sorry, I was having trouble seeing that word there. Of Transmeta, a startup company in the first stages of designing an energy-saving central processing unit. Torvalds then accepted a position at Transmeta and moved to California with his family. Along with his work for Transmeta, Torvalds continued to oversee the kernel development for Linux. In 2003, Torvalds left the Transmeta to focus exclusively on the Linux kernel. Backed by the Open Source Development Labs, OSDL, a consortium formed by high-tech companies, which included IBM, Hewlett-Packard, Intel, AMD, Red Hat, Novell, and many others. The purpose of the consortium was to promote the Linux development. OSDL merged with the Free Standards Group in January 2007 to become the Linux Foundation. Torvalds remains in the ultimate authority on what new code is incorporated into the standard Linux kernel. Okay, and that is still true today. All right, so that's pretty much an overview of who Linus Torvalds is. And if you ever run into somebody that it gets in your face about it, I don't know, that just happens. That was my experience. That was, I guess, 2001. So yeah, that's all I wanted to talk about today on the podcast. Just pretty much an overview of who Linus Torvalds is. And I'll probably in another podcast go over who Richard Stallman is, because that's just some basic information that every Linux user should know. Pretty much the roots of where the operating system came from. And to be fair, this is really just the roots of where the kernel came from, because the operating system uses the kernel, but the operating system is much more than the kernel. So, all right, thank you for joining me today, and I will try to be back here tomorrow, and I'm going to be talking about some other interesting things. So please join me back here tomorrow, and take a listen to this track from my buddy Nathan Hale. And thank you, Nathan, for letting me premiere one of your songs today.